I'm composer Jennifer Higdon, and the Nashville Symphony is going to be performing my work, Low Brass Concerto. So, in writing this low brass concerto, the main inspiration were low brass players. It sounds very simple, but one of the things I've noticed through the years as I've worked with different orchestras, and even when I was teaching and watching rehearsals, the low brass players always have a certain kind of joy when they're playing, and they're also fun to hang out with. They tend to be a relaxed group of people. So when I was writing this, I thought about the fact that they don't really have a lot of repertoire that they can stand in front of an orchestra and basically play so everyone can see them and hear them. Normally we hear them in big blasty music, some big orchestral piece. You hear them at the power moment. But it was kind of an incredible thing to think about putting them at the front and letting them play beautiful music too. They can do the power, but they can also play melodically, just this gorgeous stuff. And so I thought of the four players kind of like a choir, except they're a brass choir. But I also kept in mind that they just have a good time when they're playing, and their joy is infectious. You know, it's interesting. The piece it alternates between the slow lyrical sections where everyone is kind of moving together, almost like a choir. There are also solos. Everyone gets a solo. There are also some duets. Quite a few of the low brass players asked for this. The two tenor trombones wanted to play together, and they said, have you ever thought about having a bass trombone and tuba duet? And I have to confess, I had never thought about that. It's an unusual, but I thought, oh, that's a cool challenge. But you know, the brass can really rock. And so I wanted to create part of this concerto being basically them rocking. So one of the things is, it's a little bit like a rock and roll thing, but it's a fast, complicated thing because they're alternating voices, and it makes it interesting, but it's hard. I mean, there's no doubt this is a concerto, which when you write a concerto, you're usually trying to push the players to show off their technical ability and their musicianship. So this is really a technical ability question. But I find the musicians in orchestras now they're so good. They all are so fantastic, and so it was worth it just to write something that would kind of push it, but also be interesting for the audience to hear and experience. And having the layers of the rhythm causes the audience to kind of look across the four players. So I'm like hugely excited that this is going to be recorded, because I have found that a lot of low brass concerto players have heard about the piece, and they're all like, what does it sound like? They're super enthusiastic. There was nothing to look at when I was going to write this, because normally I will study the repertoire of whoever I'm featuring in a concerto, but the only thing I could find in all of the repertoire, they basically gave me the big orchestra pieces where they have 16 bars where they play out and you hear them. So I literally went through all these scores and looked at those moments, those just little moments. But it was a real guessing game, and it was actually a little scary trying to figure out, would this work in a concerto format? And four soloists at the same time is also a really unusual thing. But, you know, when you're working with really good players, anything's possible. I think the fact that I have gotten to record with this orchestra before, and we had a great time doing the All Things Majestic CD, the viola concerto and oboe concerto on there, so we had the benefit of having basically one of the players in the orchestra as a soloist, but also just watching the whole process in this hall. I think this hall is incredible. It's one of my favorite halls in the world. But also working with a conductor like Giancarlo, who just brings pure joy to the music making. He kind of pulls the whole orchestra along with him. But the high level of musicianship also, this is a composer's dream. This is what you always kind of dream about, and because I've been able to do it before, I'm super excited because I know what this experience is going to be like. So it'll be inspiring, but also the kind of thing that for the thousands of hours you spend in your studio working on a piece, and those moments you're like, can I do this? You think about working with the Nashville Symphony and recording. It's absolutely, everything is totally inspirational.